Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive that's really tailored to something you're dealing with, and that's looping and perseveration. We're going to be taking a look at this blog post here, Navigating Looping and Perseveration Strategies for Autistic Adults. And it's got some really good tips.
Uh-huh.
Hopefully we can pull out some that really speak to you.
Yeah, and it's a great post to be diving into. They point out in there that these tendencies are really, really common. Like, did you realize that 70% of autistic adults experience some form of repetitive behavior?
That's a lot.
It's huge.
Yeah. That really stood out to me too when I saw that stat. It always helps to know you're not alone in something, right?
Absolutely.
But before we even jump into solutions,
Mhm.
I'm kind of curious, why does this happen? Why does our brain get stuck on repeat sometimes?
It's a great question, and it's not about being stubborn or anything like that. It's really more about the way that the brain seeks comfort, predictability, especially when anxiety comes into play. Looping or perseverating on a thought or an activity can be a way to kind of regain a sense of control when other things feel uncertain.
That makes sense. So it's like if my brain has found something that kind of works to calm things down, th- it's going to want to stick with it, even if it's not the most helpful thing, long term.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how do we work with that, right? Instead of always trying to force it to be different, this blog post had some, I thought, interesting ideas. And I've used some of these visual schedules, always been a big one for me.
Oh, they're so good.
Yeah.
And there's a really good reason for it. I think it's not just that you have a plan, which is really helpful, but it's that you're reducing that mental load on executive functioning, which can be really difficult sometimes for neurodivergent brains.
hmm
But when you have that visual clarity, you take away uncertainty, and then that frees up so much mental space for other things.
Right. Because instead of my brain constantly going, wait, what am I supposed to be doing next? What if I forget something? You can just relax and follow along with the visual cues.
So,
It's like you're giving your brain a roadmap
yeah,
so it doesn't have to keep asking for directions.
it's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Right.
And the best part, too, is the research shows that using a visual schedule can reduce feelings of being overwhelmed by almost half, like 40%.
Wow.
That's big.
40%. Yeah, that's definitely one to keep in mind. Speaking of feeling overwhelmed, let's talk about timers.
Mm.
I have a timer obsession. I'll just admit that right now.
It's amazing how helpful they are, though.
They are. There's something about that external cue that's like, okay, time to shift gears now.
Yeah, it's like this gentle reminder instead of it having to be this internal struggle.
Right.
And it's not just like anecdotal or anything. Studies show that using timers, especially when you're switching between tasks, can actually increase successful transitions by about 50%.
50%. Okay. I'm sold. Sold on the timers.
They're good.
But then what about those times when the thoughts just won't quit? Like even with the schedule, even with the timer, there's got to be times when your brain is just like, nope, I want to stay locked in.
Totally. And that's where I think mindfulness techniques can be so, so valuable. Things like, deep breathing or even guided meditation can be really, really grounding.
Like hitting the pause button
Yes.
on those thoughts. Just like
Yes.
a moment to just breathe and just be present.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging those thoughts without having to get swept away in them.
Right.
And again, there's research on this too. Mindfulness practices have been shown to reduce anxiety and repetitive behaviors sometimes by a significant margin, like around 30% in some studies.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what just taking those few moments can do.
That's incredible. Just taking a few moments to be mindful can make that much of a difference.
Yeah.
Okay, adding that to my list. What's next? Designated worry time. Now that one sounds a little counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it? But it can be surprisingly effective. So instead of trying to suppress those thoughts all day, you're acknowledging them. You're setting aside a specific time, maybe it's 15 minutes, and in that time you can process the feelings.
So you're basically telling your brain, we'll deal with this later.
Exactly.
Right now we're focusing on something else.
Exactly. We're creating a container,
Yes.
but it's on your terms.
Right.
And the research supports this too. Studies show that establishing a designated worry time can actually contain those thoughts, limiting their intrusion by a significant amount, often around 40%.
It's so interesting. I can see how that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, redirecting with interest. Now that one is me.
Yes.
All about those healthy distractions when I can.
Right. But it's not just distraction. It's really about harnessing that power of your passions. When you feel yourself getting stuck in that loop, you can consciously choose to engage with something that you love, something that really truly captivates your attention. Could be a hobby, a special interest, even listening to your favorite music.
It's like giving your brain a break,
Yes.
which we all need from time to time.
Yeah.
Is there research, though, behind this? Like behind redirecting with your interests?
There is. There is. Studies suggest that redirecting your attention to something engaging, something enjoyable, can actually be really effective in about 60% of cases.
Wow.
It's really about tapping into those things that naturally draw you in, that make you feel good.
60%. That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. So it sounds like finding ways to incorporate your passions into your day could be a game changer. Journaling.
Yes,
I feel like journaling is always a good idea. It's like having a conversation with yourself
it is.
on paper.
And with looping, it can be so helpful because it allows you to get those thoughts out of your head onto the paper. And when you can see them visually, they so often lose a bit of their power.
And you can identify patterns. You can identify triggers.
Totally.
It's like detective work for your own brain.
Yes. Have you ever noticed that? Like how it helps you connect the dots in your own experiences?
Absolutely. Sometimes I don't even realize I'm like stuck on something until I see it written down.
Right. And speaking of connecting the dots, did you know that journaling has actually been shown to reduce anxiety and repetitive thoughts in about 35% of individuals?
Wow, that's really powerful.
It's not just a way to vent.
Right.
There's like real science behind it.
Yeah, for sure. And another strategy that I think often gets overlooked is physical activity.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like a good workout does wonders for just kind of clearing my head.
It's huge. And again, it's not just like anecdotal,
Right.
The research really supports it. When we engage in physical activity, our brains release all sorts of those feel-good chemicals that combat anxiety, and in turn can sometimes really reduce those repetitive behaviors,
It's like hitting the refresh button.
physically and mentally.
Exactly.
The stats on this one are pretty impressive too, right?
They are. Regular physical exercise has been shown to really improve overall mood and reduce perseveration by up to 50% in some cases.
Wow. 50%.
It's amazing.
I'm feeling inspired to move my body after this. Okay, one last strategy from this blog post that I thought was really interesting. Social stories for adults. I feel like we always think about those for kids,
Right, right.
but it sounds like they can be helpful for adults too.
They absolutely can. And the idea is to create like a short story that walks you through a specific situation
Okay.
where you might typically experience that looping or that perseveration.
So it's like a personalized game plan
Yeah,
to navigate those moments.
exactly.
Almost like a mental rehearsal in a way.
Totally. And it helps you anticipate those moments and even have those coping strategies ready in advance. And surprise, surprise, there's research to back this up too. Even in adults, social stories can improve self-awareness and reduce anxiety by about 25%.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's like that theme of like having a plan,
Yes.
even if it's a mental plan, can make such a difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the best part about all of this is you don't have to choose just one of these strategies.
Right.
It's really about finding what works best for you, and that might be combining different approaches.
Yeah. You're building your own little toolkit.
Totally.
We've got visual schedules, we've got timers, we've got mindfulness, we've got that worry time that we were talking about, redirecting with your interests, journaling, getting active, and even those social stories. That's quite the collection.
It is. It's exciting to think about all the ways that you can combine those.
I love that. It's not about finding the like perfect solution.
Right.
It's about finding what works for you in that day,
Exactly.
in that moment.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a really insightful deep dive. And, I was thinking as we were talking about all this blog post really focused on like the individual strategies. But what if we took it a step further?
I like where you're going with this.
What if instead of just using them individually,
Uh-huh.
we thought about how they work together? Like imagine combining, say, a visual schedule, but you build in those worry time breaks throughout the day. So you're not just managing it when it happens, you're kind of proactively creating that structured and supportive environment for yourself.
That's such a good point.
Right.
Yeah, it's like taking those individual tools and building a masterpiece.
Yes. It's about empowering yourself with the strategies that make you feel more in control, more able to kind of navigate the ups and downs of, just being a human. This has been such a thought-provoking conversation. But remember, you are the expert on your own experiences. Keep exploring these strategies, keep advocating for your needs, and never underestimate the power of those small steps. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And until next time.